You know, in the wake of the Las Vegas mass shooting, there's one pattern that is starting to drive me nuts. And it's the tendency of some to, I don't know, assert their conservative leanings by letting you know that they support the Second Amendment after the worst mass shooting in American history and one of the worst in the world. I don't know what the list is. But my point is, why is it so important for you to do that? It has really nothing to do with the situation. If someone says, you know, we need to control guns, we do. That's not saying anyone doesn't have the right to do what they want to do, but we need to figure out a way around this solution. But the bottom line is, it doesn't make any sense to launch into that when it was a gun that did the damage, and the person who employed the weapon undoubtedly felt the same way. He had no criminal record. He was, for all practical purposes, a social zero, in that we had no trail. He had no social media trail, nothing where you could get an idea of who the person was in today's world. Before the internet, you'd reach out to friends and someone out there does have an opinion about who the man is. The sad fact of life, however, is that as you get up there in age, unless you're part of different groups, your friends tend to fall off. Some of them get married and have been married and have their own lives and have established their lives. And if you don't have kids, for example, I don't believe he had kids, and you have friends who do, you're not going to stay in touch with each other. If you have a college life that you maintain by still going to games and alumni functions, like me, for example, you do stay in touch with your friends. And so you have an idea of how they're doing, and they have a pattern of how you are later in life. But it doesn't seem like that was the case for Stephen Paddock, 64 years old. And what he was known for was gambling in Las Vegas and apparently having some drink. But beyond that, we don't know. But to say that you support the Second Amendment, I really don't care. Does that mean that, because when I hear that, and when I read that, I think immediately the person who's putting that out there has no problem telling me, first of all, that they are a possible future Stephen Paddock. That's how I interpreted it. Okay? That's exactly how I interpreted it. You should be sensitive enough to the situation to not do that, and understand why there are those who would want to call for gun control under the circumstances, because a gun was used out of control. It's gun control. No one's talking about taking your firearms away from you, unless, of course, you have that kind of firearm. And that's why I point to this. Again, what are you saying? It's okay for you to have something like that, to do that? Why else would you be so insensitive as to bring up your support for the Second Amendment right now? Someone on Facebook said to me, well, you can be saddened what happened in Las Vegas and yet go out and state your support for the Second Amendment. Actually, you can't, because if that's in your mind, the very act of doing that tempers whatever understanding you're going to have for the loss of life in that situation. It just does, because you're first thinking about you wanting to have that instrument. And by the way, I have to point out that having more guns has not stopped these heinous events from occurring. If anything, it's just made them worse. But it's not even a question of control in the way of taking away. It's a way of control. The question is, who's monitoring what a person does when they have it? For example, why would the hotel let someone have that many firearms in their room? Did the housekeeper see them? Who helped him get those guns into his room? He had 10 rifles. How could he have done it by himself? Well, I suppose he could have, but how? Did anybody see this guy with all this? Was it just a matter of what's called hiding in plain sight? Oh yeah, he's right over there. He's got those big bags. He must be a musician. He's like an old white guy. He's grizzled. He looks harmless. Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh yeah. Oh brother. We have to change. We must change. And one of the linchpins of change is for you to stop telling me about how you feel about the Second Amendment. I don't want to take away anyone's right to, as I say, bear arms, but I do want to take away someone's right to have them in possession, and yet I can't get away from you, or I can't restrict where you use them. Okay? That's a big issue with me. It's an enormous one. But for you to just sort of trot that out, why don't you try this? Instead of doing that, try this. Say, you know what? This is a really sad time for America. And yes, we need to figure out something to do about this situation. And let it be at that. Because I would 1000% agree with you there if you said that. But a lot of you don't. You just sort of trot out, you trot out this idea that you support the Second Amendment as if to say you want things the way they are. I'm sorry. Things cannot be the way that they were. They just can't.